As Lisa said, I'm Karalyn. I am the Director of Digital Marketing and Growth for Gravity Blankets. We are a weighted blanket company that launched in 2017 on Kickstarter, and we raised about $5 million in a span of about 30 days. When we originally launched, Facebook and Instagram was like our #1 platform, and after about year one, we realized that it's very risky to be reliant on just one platform, which is why we wanted to diversify our ad spend and really figure out other avenues in order to get more traffic to site.
Karalyn, just to stop you here.
Sorry.
I just want to tell them a little bit about your story in terms of, Gravity Blanket. And I know initially you even were nervous that you'd be able to even promote this product. And is it something that's sellable? And a lot of people, does everyone here know what Gravity Blanket is? No? Yes, we got one hand back there. So just let people know a little bit about what the product is, and then we can get into more of how you're...
Yeah, sure. So it's a weighted blanket. It comes in a few different weights. It's 15, 20, and 25 pounds. We actually are the only blanket in the market right now that's been proven to improve sleep quality by using deep touch pressure stimulation to simulate the same feelings that you get as if you're being hugged. When we originally launched, there was a lot of scientific jargon associated with the science behind a weighted blanket, but being that we originated from a media company that was focused on science and tech, we were really good at being able to take these complex ideas and simplify it so that it was easier for everybody to understand.
Now, did you know right away in terms of when you were ready to start marketing it that you were going to be going smaller as opposed to, big TV ad?
Honestly, we didn't think growth was going to be this crazy. We had a campaign goal of $500,000 and figured it'd just be a passive income thing and be oh yeah, we made a products division within our media company. And then when we hit $2 million 2 weeks into it, we're okay, so this is a real thing.
I guess we'll keep with this.
Yeah, so I guess we could possibly start looking at different avenues. And, social is really all we knew. We came the reason why Futurism became so big was because we were really good at creating social videos, both short form and long form. And so we just did it.
So walk us through in terms of, so initially, as you said, you weren't expecting much, and then you launched on Facebook?
Yes.
So tell me about that, how that, because a lot of people maybe have something where they're not sure where they want to take it and sort of test the waters. And social is a great way to do this. Tell us what you did, or what you did at Gravity, to kind of kick this off, and then, surprise, surprise, it's a big success, and then we'll go into how you're expanding.
Yeah, so one of our biggest issues in the beginning was attribution, right? With Kickstarter, you're not really able to place a Facebook pixel. It's all just Google. And so at first, when we tested different video concepts, it wasn't necessarily related to our blanket. It was related to sleep and anxiety, and those always performed well. But when we started creating videos, we had no budget. We're a small company. We had no budget, and we're trying to make something work. We had one sample of a product. And so I guess when we first started going through the process of creating these social videos, we used a lot of stock footage, and we shot on iPhone a lot for any of the filler content that we were able to use. Funny thing is the first video that we used to launch on social was shot on an iPhone with an Amazon tripod. We invited a bunch of friends, family, dads, neighbors to come to our office and just organically have them try this weighted blanket, and recorded their responses. And we cut that up and threw it up. We relaunched this about a month ago, the same video, and it's still our best performing video right now on social.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So don't spend all that money on high production and...
Yeah, it was really interesting, but we paired that with an educational video.
Why don't we check out the video first before we move on to the next video?
This one's that one's for TV. That was our first TV spot that we launched.
Never mind. I knew we had something.
Yeah, we did use our social videos as, I guess, I don't know, I feel it might be easier.
Well, basically, all right, so when you finally, I guess the question would be, so when you did see the success, you just put this thing together on Facebook, what was the next move? Like, how did you know, in terms of media and what you wanted to, how you wanted to move forward? Did you want to keep social, or did you, walk us through that?
So, like I was saying earlier, being so reliant on a social platform is very, very risky. And so we wanted to find ways to diversify our ad spend, which is why we got into the OTT TV space. It was always really daunting to try to go into TV, considering a lot of people we talked about were like, you need to have $100,000 as a minimum buy, and that's going to be for like 1 week. And as a small company, we can't justify just testing with $100,000 on a network. But one of the things that we did learn from a lot of people in the industry is like, you need to create a commercial spot, like specific for TV. It needs to be branded, it needs to be like conceptual, and it needs to be like this whole production. So this video here actually is the most expensive shot, most expensive like shoot that we did. And this is actually our office. We had a producer and a set designer come in, cleared our office. The office worked from home that week, and we set this up. So we tried to be very frugal in the way that we spent, but it turned out really well. Yeah,
okay,
we
let's
did.
see this. Let's everyone check it out.
Sometimes you need to get away, like far, far away. Meet Gravity, the premium weighted blanket that launched a revolution in sleep, bringing your happy place a little closer to home. Gravity engages key pressure points on the body, improving sleep and reducing stress. 72% of people said Gravity blanket helped improve their sleep. That definitely makes us happy. Find your happy place with Gravity.
So this you did launch. How did you, what type of buys do you do?
So we actually just bought this with Linear, and we ran it with a few different companies. We're using a company now that's kind of helped us. It's been a lot more affordable, and we've been really happy with them. But we produced a shot. We went ahead and tested it. We realized that it was really difficult to have like an omni-channel marketing strategy when you shoot for TV like this, because if you look at the aspect ratio, if you're trying to get like a 4:5, it doesn't necessarily tell the story well enough. And so that was like a really big learning experience for me, is like, how are we able to get content that we'll shoot for commercials and like be able to repurpose it while not compromising the story when we need to resize it for social, especially because we've always seen a lot. It was easier for us to track performance on social. What we ended up doing is, because we didn't want just one video out there, we wanted something to like test it against. And we shot a lot of social content over the years, and they were all like they're good quality. So we were able to just repurpose a lot of our social videos that we knew had worked on social and try to run it on TV and tested it against it. So we made another 30-second spot that was a little bit more like straight to the point, that didn't really have like this whole happy place and like campaigny, brandy like pieces to it.
A
It was
more
just
about the details.
Yeah, it was more about like, hey, we're just gonna like tell you what this is, and it's pretty straightforward. So if we want to take a look at that.
Meet Gravity, the weighted blanket that launched a revolution in sleep. Gravity Blanket is the only brand of weighted blanket proven to improve sleep and reduce stress. Gravity works by engaging key pressure points on the body to mimic the feeling of being hugged. In a recent Sleep Score Lab study, 72% of people reported a better night's sleep with Gravity. Join the tens of thousands talking about Gravity Blanket, now available in cooling for spring and summer.
Okay, so before I ask you, I know everyone's tired, but I want to get you involved. Which video or which commercial do you think did better? For the first one, raise your hands. Got a few. Okay. How about the second one? The majority. Well?
So the second one did perform a lot better and was probably a third of the cost of the first one. So that was another big lesson learned. And then, after figuring that out, we wanted to test different like, times. So if we want to do a 30-second spot and we wanted to cut it down to a 15-second spot, just to see if we could test and what the performance would be like. So I know that a lot of people struggle with going from a 30-second spot and cutting it down while not losing the type of like education that you're trying to put forward in these videos. So we actually ended up surveying our user base to see which parts, which value propositions people cared about the most. And we ended up with this 15-second video, and as a cut down of that second video, and I'll explain why we chose that messaging shortly.
Meet Gravity, the original weighted blanket for sleep, stress, and anxiety. Gravity is the only weighted blanket demonstrated to improve sleep and reduce stress. Now available in cooling for summer.
By the way, the code end cards never worked for us. Yeah, just didn't really do anything for us. So we landed with that script because when we launched with the weighted blanket for sleep, stress, and anxiety, and that was the best headline that we've had and we still use today, and it was pretty straightforward and people understood the concept. We had to decide between having something that was like relatable, like the mimicking the sensation of being hugged, or going through a sleep study. And so when we also did a messaging test on Facebook and we surveyed our user base, and it's pretty close, but I think a little bit more people actually preferred the science portion than the actual relatable portion, and that's how we ended up with that.
Well, I mean, a lot of people also, I think, and you mentioned it when you were first introducing the 15-second, it's not always easy to go down to 15 seconds. And I think because you guys started really as social and you started in that, you're used to sort of telling those short, simple stories and getting your point across. Mm-hmm. What type of advice would you give everyone in terms of doing something like that? Because it's obviously an asset to be able to, just run a 15-second, especially now with everyone's attention spans being, what they are.
Oh yeah, I mean, year over year I go to all these like I go to Pinterest, I go to Google and Facebook, and they all talk about how at one point it was like, oh, we only have 3 seconds of their attention. Then it went to like 1 second. Then it's like 1/10 of a second, 1/36 of a second. And so, creating shorter content has always been a really big key point in advertising for us because we've always been so involved in social. In terms of like how to create content like that, we test everything, right? We test all these different scripts. We A/B test everything on Facebook before we even think about putting it on TV or OTT. I think it's like a really interesting way to gauge people's, I guess, like interactions with it, right? If you're even getting enough engagement, then that should be like a good qualifier as to like things that people want to talk about in your commercials worth talking about. The other thing that I always notice too is that everything ends up on social anyways. And it takes something to impact somebody from either a commercial or a billboard or something in order for it to end up on social. So if you can already gain the traction there, then you're pretty much good to go on TV.
Was there a particular model that you used, or in terms of, what worked for you television-wise? I know you mentioned something about you wanted to do more event TV as opposed to regular programming.
So yeah, when we originally got into the TV space, everybody was like frequency. You need high frequency. Like that's what you need to buy. So, carved out budget. Again, we're not like venture backed or anything. We're just a small little company, and we don't have these like $1 million budgets to just throw into TV. So we went the frequency play. Wasn't really working for us, and so we decided to be a little bit more strategic on how we placed. And so now everything that we run is very event-based. So we'll run on like big sports team, like sport matches, or we run on like the debates or award shows versus just running on regular networks just because we don't have like the funds to just go and continue running there. Like the media plan that we have going into holidays, like, we're splitting it up. We're going back into testing OTT. Like we had a interesting experience the first time we tested it, but now we're going back into it. And some of the hesitations that I originally had was like, if I'm looking at these minimum buys for companies like, I don't know, like Hulu, as a company of our size, we just don't have the funds to like meet with like a I don't know, like $50,000 1 week flight. And so we're trying to find like other ways around and getting into these spaces, especially, and also, sorry, with Hulu, the concern that I also had was like the ad-supported accounts. I don't know if they would actually fit our demo, considering we're a $250 blanket. And so really just trying to find like the the most efficient way to spend our budget. And yeah, and we saw that, right? Like when we started doing event-based spots, we saw our cost per visit decrease by more than like 60%.
Well, how did you even measure your success in terms of what metrics did you use? And because a lot of times that's what we've been talking about, is it's very difficult to kind of get a good gauge for that because it can really vary from one site to the next.
Yeah, so the company that we're using, it's a company called Tatari, and they have like a really intuitive dashboard that we like using. But it's like you always try to find ways to kind of validate whether like what your vendor partner is actually like saying is true. And so we've added a few different things. We like survey our consumers, which I think a lot of people do, but we've also added a referral option as part of our checkout process, so that as they're going through, they have to identify why or how they got to our site, whether it was radio or TV or influencer, celebrity or whatever, which has actually been proven to be kind of interesting because we don't realize that even though they may have purchased on Facebook, what got them to buy was seeing it on TV. And so going from a platform like performance, like attribution sort of thing, we went to like a multi-touch attribution model. Because as we started running TV, we saw our retargeting audiences increase and our CPAs drop. And then when we wouldn't run TV and like stop running on these like primetime spots, we noticed that our audience did drop down. So really paying attention to like the different sizes and like the decrease in our CPAs was really the best way for us to gauge performance. And then tying it back to our reports based on like what people had actually inputted for referrals.
And are you finding, and you talked about obviously creating for social and then creating for TV, which one's working better for you?
Oh, social. From both like a budget standpoint and my sanity standpoint, social. Like we did a shoot last week, and it's very interesting when you work with videographers and you tell them like, hey, I'm going to use this for 16:9 and 2:3 and 9:16 and 4:5. And so when you build your set, you have to shoot way further back in order to get as much use out of your content as possible.
And not to interrupt, but that is a concern. I know that I've speaking with people that they don't have a budget to, keep shooting a different video for every single platform. So this is how you were able to do it and keep it obviously in a tighter budget.
Yeah, so all the video content that we shot like very, very wide. And then we made sure that when we did our set that it would work for every single size. Because that not only is efficient, but it helps us with like an omni-channel marketing strategy and gets us to create the content that we need in the sizes with that in mind when you're already shooting. One of the things that I really hate on set is like, oh, we'll figure it out in post, and then like no, like that's not happening. And there is a way to do it. It's just about being cognizant of all the sizes and actually looking at the set with like an actual grid of like, this is what 2:3 will look like, this is 4:5, this is 9:16, 16:9, and like looking at it that way. It's tough, but like it's very doable, and it'll save you guys a lot of time and money.
And what about in terms of, content? I mean, every site is going to have their own, I know certain sites, you want to start with a face, or sometimes you want to start with something else, like some sort of message sells better from, not everything's the same. How do you keep that in mind without, doing a completely different ads?
So we actually, our approach to when we create content is we pair up like testimonials and like reviews and anything to really validate our product person to person. And we have that as like one separate part of our shoot, right? And then we always pair it with an educational piece. So we are running both of them simultaneously on social, even though with like TV, it's all just our prospecting stuff, which is their educational videos. But yeah, we'll do our educational videos on prospecting, and then all of our like testimonial and person-to-person review as our retargeting, and that's the way that we've seen it work. Like without having any sort of like testimonial retargeting sort of content, like we've noticed that it just does not really work for us. So it's just kind of like a special sauce, I guess.
Are there any questions out here that anyone needs to find out about?
I know we talked when we.
Hi.
Hi. How are you? Can you just touch on user-generated content, like how you've leveraged that? Because there are a lot of brands that there's that natural conversation that's happening. How have you brought that into the video space and are leveraging it?
Yeah. So when we've actually worked with like a lot of influencers that like we don't really pay a lot of influencers either. And when we do, we ask as like part of their like scope is, would you mind taking a video for us, like if you like the product? Or we go through and we see people who actually do Instagram stories for us that are like, you guys, I love my blanket. And then we just ask if we can use it, and then they're usually like happy to get exposure because they're like, I can't believe like Gravity posted me, and like it ends up being really interesting. But yeah, user-generated content is really important to us. We're trying to be a little bit better at incorporating it. It's just a little bit difficult when we have like Twitter, for example. We get a lot of feedback on Twitter, and we can't really put that into video content. So we actually pair that as a cover photo for our videos, so that we have that as like a first glance, and then goes into whatever video, whether it's a testimonial or even if it's just like one testimonial or a mashup.
Are you also selling on Amazon and doing any advertising on Amazon directly? And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we are advertising on Amazon. We run both display and sponsored products. Selling a $250 blanket on Amazon is tough, but it's a lot riskier not to be on there than to be on there at this point. We've seen that a lot of the Amazon consumers are a little bit more budget conscious. So, one of the leading brands on Amazon right now, they sell their weighted blanket at like $98. And you can like kind of pull their data using like apps like Jungle Scout, and you'll see what they're doing. And it's really about like their price, like that audience being a little bit more price conscious. But like we understand the market. Like we know how much it costs to make like a good quality weighted blanket. Like we don't have a $250 blanket just to have it. It's because we're really careful about the type of fabrics and materials that we use. And a blanket at like $98, I would say has very interesting materials that are being used for it. But yeah, we do launch on Amazon. We also are in Amazon UK and EU, and that's really our only like global presence right now. But we're still working on like a global expansion.
What about with Amazon tools in terms of now you can create your own page with Amazon, and you can have your brand more focused on as opposed to just the product. Are you doing anything like that?
Yeah, so we have our storefront. We are actually working on revamping it, but because of the way that Amazon storefront works, it's really difficult to really fully customize it because it's all module based. And like, for example, there's sometimes we'll have way too many images and it won't fit with the template that we were trying to create. So it does get a little bit challenging. Like I wish they would allow us to just customize it fully so that we could tell our story the way that we want to. We have it, but honestly, we haven't really seen a lot of people utilize it. And we also don't really run paid on social for Amazon specifically because it's a lot better for us to do sales on our owned and operated.
And also, I know you sort of, when you talk about with OTT, I'm sort of jumping away from Amazon, but I wanted to get back to it. You had said you really didn't have a lot of success. Tell me about what your experience was, and you said you're going to kind of try getting into it again. What are you going to do? Yeah,
it's kind of hard to gauge, right? Like our issue when we first ran OTT is we were using this other company. We were still pretty new into the space, so we're still learning. But the number one thing for us is figuring out conversion data. And 3 weeks into it, we still didn't get like access to our dashboard or really get any conversion data. So it's really hard to like gauge, and that is what made us a little bit more hesitant to test in OTT again. But we know that it's important for us to be on there. And honestly, I like to be proven wrong. So like if Hulu were to be like, yeah, we'll drop your minimum buy to like something that's a lot more cost effective for us, like I'd be more than happy to throw money in there. But like Roku, I think, is a little bit more affordable from what I've seen. And yeah, I think going into holiday, if you guys end up seeing any of our ads, let me know what you think. I'm very happy to get your feedback.
Any more questions?
Just real quick, how long, I'm sorry, I'm Gayatri with LiveRamp. How long do you give something to work in a test and learn cycle? Like how long, you said you test everything.
Yes.
What does that sprint look like?
It really depends on what we're testing and how many like different variables it is. If it's like we're testing 5 different pieces of creative, then we have to meet a certain budget for that. And also, like if we're looking at time, it's typically about 1 to 2 weeks. Now, if I need to shorten the timeline because we know that we're testing something and we're launching like a promo next week and we're trying to figure out what's best to test, then we increase the budget. So we're trying to really find the balance between time and money spent.
Hi there, Emily Cavalier, 4C Insights. I'm curious to hear from you whether your target audiences are different by channel, if there are any nuances there in how you're using TV targeting-wise versus what you're doing in social, or if you're really looking to support and find the same audience on every channel.
Honestly, it's a little bit different. When we do a lot of like national local buys, we'll see a little bit of like, on social, we get a lot of like younger people, right? We have like 5 to 34, and then when we run these like debate spots, we'll see an uptick in age, because I think they're, especially when we're running linear, like a lot of people in our like 25 to 34 age range are like cable cutters, and so we do reach like a new audience. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam with AdWallet. I had a quick question. Obviously, you guys are just starting out, and so everything is sort of budget limited. What can we test? What can we try? But we don't have the luxury of a $50 million budget to go out there. I guess I was curious, if you had a $50 million budget, if it was suddenly, no, we have plenty of money. We have all options available. Of the ones that you've tested, it sounds like you've dipped your toe into the ones that you could. Which ones would you fully lean into, and which ones would be, because we heard yesterday with all the discussion we've had, 90% still going to linear, 10% is an OTT budget, even for some of the larger media buyers. With what the knowledge you have now, if someone were to just give you a $50 million check and say, hey, use it how you use it the best, but what are the weapons you'd choose? Would you lean more into the sum that you've had? Would you not try, I guess I'm curious, like, would you suddenly have a massive linear budget and still a smaller OTT, a small percentage OTT, or forget that, we're going to go deep into social, or, just curious.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, $50 million would be a dream. I would definitely test OTT and find ways. I'd be more, I would expand my views on OTT a little bit more and give it more time to actually perform than I would now. I also would put more money into these award shows that could be really, really pricey, as we've known that event-based spots are actually a lot better for us. I wouldn't do like a celebrity like face of the brand, even though I know a lot of people try to do that. We've gotten a lot of free promotion from a lot of celebrities, and hasn't really moved the needle as much as we would like it to. And then, and putting things on social. Like, until we get clear attribution in a lot of these other platforms, it's difficult for us to stay away from social. And it's just a lot easier for us to produce. What else? I've been actually really interested in doing some more out-of-home stuff, which we'll also be testing in holiday. But even like things like direct mail also typically have pretty big minimum buys, and so finding other more cost-effective ways has been important. But if we had more budget, I'd be like Subway ad there, billboard here, everywhere. Yeah.
But it sounds like social or other means besides TV would be the lion's share. You wouldn't suddenly throw it all into television?
That's a lot of money for us to throw into television for something that we've seen work. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I put that much. I mean, just to give you guys like a timeline of how we've been kind of adjusting our spend the past few years. The first year we spent about 90% of our budget on Facebook and Instagram, with about 10% being on Google. And then beginning of this year, we probably dropped that to about 75, 80% on social, and then the rest being split amongst Google and like testing a little bit more into Pinterest. When we're looking at it as like H1, and then now we're about 60% on Facebook and Instagram, about 10 to 15% on TV, and then the remaining 25% being split amongst Pinterest, direct mail, influencers, Google, and doing some little test buys with other display networks. So TV's coming up there. Like, if you asked me a year ago if I thought I'd be spending like 15% of my budget on TV, I'd be like, I don't even think so. That's not really a concept, because I didn't think I could buy TV at the price that I can buy it now.
Anyone else?
We have, yeah. The most like geo-targeted one we've done was just New York, like greater New York area. Any other like location stuff that we do want to try, if we know that we have like a big like New York presence, then we'll really tie that into the different sports teams that are playing and place within those spots.
Second part to the test and learn question. You said that you would give if you had unlimited budget, you would give more time to OTT to perform. How long do you give to TV to perform, or do you see them as different? Do you give them different thresholds?
Honestly, we probably tested TV, took about like a month and already got strong results. With OTT, was about 3 weeks in without really getting any clear data around whether it was performing or not. When we originally did launch, we launched with the promo code, and like we had like 2 redemptions or something, and I was like, oh, this is like terrifying. But when we added the referral checkout like option, like we actually noticed a lot more people that were just finding codes online. With OTT, I'd probably tested a lot longer because of seasonality. Like when we originally tested it, probably wasn't like the best time to, and now that we're going into holiday and it's a colder weather, and it's blanket season, I would probably give it like an entire quarter of like testing at this point, as long as it was like, as long as the minimum monthly buys were within our price range.
Okay, well, I think that was great. Now we're seeing some more positive aspects of social and
Yes.
just really what we can do. But I guess just before, one last question would be, if anyone else wants to sort of go, as we've talked about, you started in social, so that's really where your, forte is. That's what you know. Mm-hmm. What's the media buy? What should someone really, in terms of, is it about testing each product? Is it all individual, in terms of whether you go Instagram or whether you go Facebook, or, you talked about Amazon and like all these different platforms. How do you figure that out? Like someone else just starting fresh with it, not that anyone's just starting fresh at this point, but what's the best avenue to take?
I always recommend to just go on Facebook and have like automatic placements and kind of run it that way, and then figuring out what you're like, how you want to create this seed audience. Like a lot of when we validate, we test like whenever we have like new products, we go through a validation process, and that's kind of the same thing, right? We're trying to figure out if this new product is going to be able to be marketed to everybody. And so we use like a small email list of like our top converters and our ones that probably have the highest lifetime value, and put them into an audience segment and then test ads to them. And then once we get our data back, we're able to see like if it's Facebook that they're converting on the most, if it's Instagram or audience network or newsfeed. Something that was actually really surprising is that our right-hand column ads, when we create an ad set specifically targeting that placement, which ended up being, I think it was like 5 cents per click or something. It was really, really cheap. We were actually even able to get conversions there at a lower price. It just takes a while to get there, but it's something that's worth having. But yeah, I would always like start on there because it's you have a lot more control over it. and you get data back really quickly, and it's easy for you to just like turn off, turn on, and adjust as needed.
And then just build from there.
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Karalyn, everyone.
Thank you, guys.